You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So tonight, Skeleton Crew as a show is something that we never really talked that much about. In fact...
Well, it's not... Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and it probably is going to be along the lines of what you're going to say, is that, it just, I actually forgot about it. It's not something that's really hyped up all that much, and it's not a show that... I don't even know if there's really even a demand for this thing. You don't hear anything about it in fan circles. Nobody talks about it at all, even though... of course, we're going to talk about the cast tonight, but, it's one of those things where Jude Law has been attached to star in this thing for a couple of years now, and they announced it at Celebration, but then, nobody... you haven't really heard from it from Lucasfilm or anything like that. You haven't heard anything from, fans like, hey, I wonder when Skeleton Crew's coming out. None of that. So I don't know.
Yeah, much like the title itself, Skeleton Crew's basically next to nothing, and that's pretty much what we've been getting from this particular installment in the Star Wars franchise.
David's with us. Says, hello, gentlemen, TGIF. It's Star Wars Day. Indeed it is, yes, my friend. Indeed it is.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I don't know how this is going to land with the fans. That's what I'm really most concerned about.
Yeah.
Because, after the bomb of Ahsoka, and that's kind of, some people really enjoyed it and they loved Ahsoka. And then there's others like, myself and David who kind of think it sucked overall. I think that going into this particular installment in the franchise, one, it's not exactly what I don't think fans really are clamoring for, and I think that answers your question as to why you haven't heard anything, is because it's like, okay, whatever. At first when I heard about this, I was just out when it was first announced, and I heard what the premise of it was. I was just like, oh great, a bunch of kids. So now I'm getting like, what's the show? Resistance.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna be, like that. I guess it was billed more as like a Star Wars meets Stand By Me or maybe Super 8 or something like that. And those, look, I've seen both. Well,
they basically said it. They said it's the Goonies set in space, basically.
Oh yeah. It's still kind of within that realm.
Yeah.
Super 8. It I don't know. It's one of those things where I think that it has, well, this is what we say before every series debuts, right? But it has some promise. Now, usually when we're talking about a show like Ahsoka, or we're talking about Andor or Obi-Wan or any of these other ones, we always frame it by saying, okay, look, this show actually has promise. You go into it with the best of intentions about, yes, this is going to be cool. And that's because in virtually every case, no matter what the outcome is, because let's face it, a lot of the shows, with the pure exception of maybe The Mandalorian, have been pretty disappointing. And even season 3 of The Mandalorian was kind of disappointing. So even though a lot of these series have fallen short of pretty much everybody's expectations, at least they hold some sort of promise. Like you go, okay, well, if they write this well, if they direct it, if, if all the pieces fall into place, it actually does have some sort of promise. This show, I think it's the same kind of deal, but yeah, it's sort of like, okay, you're really questioning the premise of the show. Like, is this going to work? And like you said, does anybody really... look, this could be an amazing show. right? But it's sort of like the Solo thing, actually. It's one of those things where, okay, most people that have seen Solo say, hey, it was, it was a great movie, it was fun, whatever. But almost in the same sentence, everybody will follow that up with, it wasn't really asking for it, though.
Hmm. Well, I think this is going to be even more because at least Solo, at least that's about a person everyone knows.
Well, yeah,
But
that's
this is
true.
like, okay, you're giving us something that, like, okay, not only do we not care, but we don't even know who these people, and what relevance, that's what's really going to be interesting. Now, this series is going to take place within the timeline of the Mandalorian, Ahsoka, in that wheelhouse. So it's post Return of the Jedi. Um,
Yeah,
Essentially, it's
see, I
supposed to be a
forgot even
coming of
that.
age.
I mean, I
Yeah,
couldn't even
see what I'm
remember.
saying?
Like, I don't even remember what, where this was even to. By the way, Dragonfly joins us too. What's up,
Dragonfly,
Dragonfly?
what's going on? But yeah, I think it's supposed to be it's supposed to be a coming of age story. You got these kids, basically they kind of stumble upon something on their home planet, and so then they go hop in a ship and they get lost kind of in the galaxy or whatnot, and they kind of go on all these little adventures trying to find their way back home. Essentially, that's the premise of the show.
So
Now, Jude
honestly, it's
Law
kind of like a
is a Force
battle.
user.
Well, it's kind of like a Battlestar Galactica then, in a way.
Yeah, you could look at it
Because I mean
that way
that's what it
too.
was, right? I mean especially the original. Now, I didn't really watch the remake or anything like that. But the original, it was essentially they were, because they were colonizing other planets and they got lost. And the whole premise of the show was they were trying to get back to Earth. That was the thing. They
Mhm.
were trying to get back home. And of course, you had the Cylons, you had all this other stuff. But this almost sounds the same way. And by the way, I still haven't gotten over whatever I've gotten. So if I start coughing or, you know, hacking or wheezing or dying, you guys know why.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really going to be interesting because Jude Law is the front runner of the show.
Right.
Um,
Well-known guy,
there's eight.
well-respected.
Yep, there's 8 episodes, so it's another 8 episode series. Um, I really don't know really what to expect outside of this. And the thing is, it's supposed to come out in December, and it's
Yeah, that
already
was
at
the
the end
other
of
thing.
October.
So think about this. We haven't seen a trailer. We haven't, this is really
Yeah,
reminding me of, well,
Solo.
kind of Solo. Yeah. I mean, I was trying to think of like, wait a second, this is familiar. And that's what it was, right? Like we haven't seen anything. I mean, we're only now getting, I think, the rest of the cast. Because if I remember, they had announced Jude Law pretty much right away. And in fact, I think he was at one of the celebrations when they actually announced this. But they might have revealed a couple more of the adult cast members. If I'm not mistaken, like, our whole show tonight is like, ooh, Skeleton Crew cast revealed. But it's mostly the kids that we're talking about now, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was an addition. Jaleel White, formerly known as the voice of
Right.
Sonic the Hedgehog, and also even more known his role as Steve Urkel.
Exactly.
Um, he's playing the role of a pirate, so that should be interesting. Um, but yeah, this is basically um, one of those type of shows where you really don't know a lot of, and because the fans, and everybody's not really clamoring for it. I'm just wondering, is this going to be a further plunge into the abyss, for Star Wars? And that's what I'm really concerned with. Now, even if this show ends up being good, like even if it ends up being like, Stranger Things or something crazy like that, right?
Which that's another, I mean, that's a good point, right? Because we talk about the Goonies. Stranger Things actually was supposed to be like that. And I think that's what Lucasfilm is trying to do. I think they're trying to go, the Stranger Things is pretty popular. Why don't we create a Star Wars version of Stranger Things and put that out? So, yeah, you have a point there. But even if it
So yeah,
does,
yeah, even if it does, it's still kind of like, all right, unless it's really trying to world build in the sense of like, okay, because now you have to do, you're still dealing within that timeline of Ahsoka Mandalorian. So are we going to be dealing with, Gideon? Are we still going to talk about the remnants of the old empire? Are we still talking about, you know, the Jedi in this? Jude Law apparently is a Force user. So there's that. We don't know if he was like some Jedi that escaped Order 66, or is he just a guy who just figured out he had the Force or whatnot. And he's just kind of using it to meander his way through the galaxy. We're not sure. But then, the stars allegedly are supposed to be these four kids. That's what that we're going to bring up today. And I'm just wondering, like, okay, one, they've already said that some things, their relationship with Jude Law is going to be kind of goofy in some ways,
Yeah.
which once again, it's like, do we really want that? But then they said there's other elements of it too, where it's going to be kind of dark and scary and, all that.
Mhm.
So it really kind of leaves us, it leaves us in a weird place, but it also means that you're asking a lot of these kid actors
Well, I mean, to go to
because,
a point that you're
you know,
making, though, just for a second, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to world build, I don't think, because that's like saying that anything set in the 1960s automatically has to world build from like JFK and the Beatles and Martin Luther King and all that. I mean, you can have stories set in a particular time period that doesn't necessarily have to reference Gideon and Thrawn and Ahsoka and the Mandalorian. You know what I mean? I mean, look, the galaxy's a big place, and I think that's really what people want now. I mean, sure, we like the Mandoverse. One of the things all of us hardcore fans have been talking about is like, well, instead of compartmentalizing everything, and everything just existing in its own little space or whatever, it would be great if we could see how all this stuff affects the other, basically like what they've done in the expanded universe all those years. On the
yeah,
other
and that's what I mean
hand,
by world build.
well, right, but I'm just saying that not everything though. So like you have Ahsoka, the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett. That's kind of the world building. Now, I would agree with you though that especially if Jude Law's character is a Force user, that does put a little bit of a. It's like now you almost do have to, because there's so few of them, right? You almost have to.
Hmm.
Well, where does this
Address
guy
them.
fit, right? Does Luke know
Hmm.
about him? Does Ahsoka know about him? You know, it's
Well,
where
not
is
just
this
that, but I
taking
mean,
place?
well, I think, see, well, and this is why I was talking about the world building, is because we're in this space and time where it's post Empire. So it's like, what does that really look like for the galaxy? And that's what I mean,
Well,
like the
okay.
building of
If
this
that's
world.
if that's what you're talking about, that's different.
Yeah,
Kind of like
and that's
right.
fleshing this stuff out, because it's like, all right, well, now you have these remnants of the empire that's lurking around. You have there's we brought up Jaleel White, to him being a pirate. So that means like lawlessness is kind of back on the rise again, because you don't have an empire that, or a republic that's really making sure all this stuff, or you have a fledgling new republic that's coming in. So they're trying to gain control of a lot of stuff, but there's still a lot of things that are going on.
Right.
And so then we're still trying to figure out, like, okay, at what point does the first order begin? So we don't know if this is still playing into that, or is it still later on down the line? So that's all I'm saying.
Well, okay, so let's take a couple of chats real quick here. Dragonfly says, if you like nostalgic stuff, it could have young Jedi Knight vibes, minus the Jedi, lol. Well, maybe not entirely minus the Jedi if Jude Law is a Force user. I mean, it doesn't necessarily make him a Jedi, of course,
True.
but it does put that on the table if you really want to get technical about it. But Dragonfly's point, is true, right? I mean, you brought up Resistance. Resistance was really made for really young kids, though, and even that, I mean, if you could look past that, and look, not everybody can, it's not going to be for everybody. There were some episodes, admittedly, I struggled to get through, but there was enough meat on that bone that I'm glad that I watched the 2 seasons, because it really did put forth the canon. There were some really compelling characters, and actually, as it got towards the end of season 1, it got really good because it was about pretty much like this base, and there were these pirate attacks, and how they were going to, how they're walking the line by not getting too noticed by the Empire because they're secretly a rebel base, essentially, but they're also having to repel these pirate. I mean, there's actually a lot of complexity in Resistance that I don't think a lot of people really picked up on if you basically tuned out within the first 2 or 3 episodes. But at the
Which I
same time, I
definitely
can
did.
understand why, because again, I mean, some people just aren't, I guess it really depends on what level of a fan you are if you want to go through that. But I can tell you that it did have some really compelling storytelling. Skeleton Crew could maybe take more the young Jedi Knight vibe, right? And this is pretty much like a lot of that was handled in the books. Like there's a whole series of books on that. And it wasn't silly like Resistance. It was very much a young adult kind of a thing. It was more like the Hardy Boys Nancy Drew, or maybe even Harry Potter or something like that. It was just kind of geared toward a younger audience, but a younger adult audience, not necessarily like 8-year-olds. And so if it is like that, which honestly, that's where I would put Stranger Things. I would call Stranger Things basically like a young adult kind of thing. All right, so David says, wow, we got Family Matters in Star Wars. He's a good actor. I'm looking forward to seeing him. And that's it. I mean, I think that this is a chance for him to actually further step away from the Urkel thing, because, a lot of people don't realize what a difficult role that was to play, especially
Yeah,
when you're not really like that in real life, I mean,
exactly.
and especially when he played, what was his alter ego's name?
Stefan Arkell.
Yes. And just like the differences, man. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
you basically bought into that. So,
Oh yeah, especially in
yeah.
the later seasons when they actually made him almost 2 different people.
Mm-hmm.
They split him so he actually had to act as Urkel in one scene, but Stefan in the same scene, and it was like, all right.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a challenging. I mean, as an actor, that's a really challenging thing to do. I mean, sometimes, obviously, this is especially true in sitcoms, which is what made Family Matters a little bit different in that regard. Is the fact that usually with the sitcom thing, it's played more for laughs, and it's kind of cheesily done. Whereas something that's a more of a dramatic role or something like that, the dual role thing could actually be a really big challenge for a lot of actors.
Yeah,
And,
definitely.
if you just ask anybody, I mean, it's just that kind of a thing, right? But
Yeah, I even marvel at this Eddie Murphy, man, the way he's able to play like
oh
a
yeah,
entire family, and they
yeah,
all sound different, act different. I mean, it's just like he has to
sure.
keep that straight in his head, and it's like it's
Well, and
crazy.
it's
But
difficult because you could actually see any of the characters that he does being its own thing, and that's a remarkable
exactly.
thing for any actor to pull off. But I mean, this is a chance for Jaleel to definitely move beyond. I mean, I guess, I don't know. For all we know, he plays an Urkel-like character in this thing. We don't. I mean, it's
Yeah, right. The pirates tripping over everything.
right. I mean, I mean, look, a pirate, especially like a space pirate, that does, especially when you think in terms of what we've seen in Star Wars before, particularly the Pikes.
See, I love Hondo. See, if he's like anything like
Hondo.
Hondo,
Well, yeah, and it, that conjures up a certain imagery. And so because of that, you are making assumptions, of course, based
hmm
on what we've seen in the past, which is really all we could do because we don't even have a trailer yet. I mean, we don't even have a teaser trailer. I don't even know if we even have, I mean, aside from some of these photos, which of course I use to, create the thumbnail that you guys see to the right of us. I mean, I don't think there's like many still. I don't think there's much that we've even seen from Skeleton Crew. I mean, like I said,
well, they have a, they have a trailer. So,
really,
um,
I
a
missed
first
it.
look at this. Well, of course, because we're not in Europe. A first look at the Skeleton Crew
Ah,
trailer was shown at Star Wars Celebration Europe, but the trailer has not been revealed to the public yet. However, if you're not afraid of spoilers, the trailer does reveal that Jude Law will be presumably playing a Jedi in the show, or at least someone who knows his way around a lightsaber.
Okay.
So we have that much.
Well, that's
More than
good.
we had before. So,
Well, yeah, and I mean,
um,
obviously, once a trailer does hit for this thing, especially because it could very well be the next thing that we see. I mean, if it's December, this is probably going to be the next Star Wars show, right?
well, yeah, I mean, it's a while no release date has been given. The series was expected to be released sometime in 2023. Recent reports have suggested that it might be pushed to early 24, in line with other delays that have been occurring across the Disney schedule in recent months. Um,
Because of the strikes.
so possibly the same leaked copyright filing mentioned above that the provided more detailed plot synopsis gave a placeholder release of January of 24
Well,
was
still,
likely. Yeah.
I mean, whether it's
However,
December of
nothing has been
23 or
officially
June.
announced.
Okay. And this is like a recent article. This wasn't like from August or something.
Correct.
Because you gotta be careful of that, man. I've been burned so many times. Like stuff will pop up in my news feeds or whatever from like Google and other sites, and I'll be like,
hmm
"Oh, this is cool." I'll never
This
forget. There
is
was one time we did a
this is late of
show.
last month.
All right. Well, and I mean, I don't know. Everything that I've seen, they've thrown out December of 23. So maybe, even last month. We'll have to see. But either way, we know it's coming out within a couple of months.
hmm
Dragonfly says, "Yo, a Hondo cameo would blow up the internet for Clone Wars and Rebels
Man,
fans.
I
Now my
love Hondo.
expectations are high." Well, yeah, I mean, that would actually be very similar to the Cad Bane cameo that we had in
Exactly.
The
I had
Mandalorian.
no, I had no, I had no idea they were bringing Cat Bane back, and now when I saw it, I was just like, no way. And he looked exactly like he did in.
Dead on. Yeah,
So if they
man.
bring
He
Hondo and
was,
Hondo, man, especially if they get the same guy to play Hondo, they have to because
well,
now
yeah.
because that his voice and the stuff that he would say, man, was just hilarious.
Well, I will tell you this. So I'm looking at this. Basically, obviously, this came from Game Rant, which I'm assuming are the same people that do Screen Rant. The name's pretty close, right? And those guys are
hmm
people. We get a lot of our show ideas from news that comes from these guys. So keep in mind the article which we based this, where we got a lot of information for this show, was only published 4 days ago, and it says scheduled for a December 2023 premiere on Disney Plus. So that's
And it would be cool to come out around Christmas time. I could see that because the families are around, so you got kids in the show. I mean that it makes sense.
it makes total sense. All right, so go ahead, start revealing these guys.
All right, so um, the series was created by director John Watts and his writing collaborator Christopher Ford. Um, Watts is on board to direct at least one episode. Um, and then we also have uh, Dave Filoni revealed that the rest of the directors on the series will be David Lowery, Jake Schreier, Bryce Dallas Howard,
Well,
and Lee Isaac Chung. Yeah, we got another Bryce Dallas Howard thing, so that's cool.
that's very cool.
Okay, yes, because she's
She's the
phenomenal.
person that I
She
would love
she
to
hasn't
just
missed yet.
no. And I mean, she's the
As far
one.
as
To me, she's the heir apparent as far as directing every Star Wars stuff. She's, totally to me the one that should be doing a. I would love to see her do some actual films, or even bring Ron Howard
mm,
back, bring her dad,
or they collaborate together. That
or if
was
they
cool.
collaborated together. Hey, the Kasdans did it. Why not them, right?
Exactly. But the kids. All right, so the four of them are played by Ryan Kier Armstrong, Ravi Cabot Conyers, Cariana Crater, and Robert Timothy Smith. So those are are characters. Um, and they're cute kids. Um, I don't know how much experience they have. They kind of look like oh, what is that show? I want to say like the like almost like the kids like from the Sandlot. That's kind of what they remind me of.
Oh yeah,
I was trying to think of
yeah.
the name.
Well, and
Excuse me.
that's look. I mean, Star Wars is notorious for doing this. They will take people who are not necessarily household names and
Hmm.
put them out there. I mean, they did that with Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, right? I mean, Carrie Fisher had a
Jake
little
Lloyd.
notoriety, Jake Lloyd, and then of course, Daisy Ridley. I mean, pretty much each one of the trilogies. I mean, the
Hmm.
prequels did have a lot of name actors in it. That was actually
Yeah,
one of the exceptions. But you still had a lot of people who either weren't like they hadn't done too much. Like take Hayden Christensen for example. He was known, but he wasn't as known as he was once he got a
that he is
hold of
now.
Star Wars.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, so Lucasfilm, I mean George Lucas did it. They've been notorious for doing this the whole time, right? It's like this is the kind of thing that they always do. They take relatively unknown people and then they pretty much put them
kind of
out
turn them,
there. Yep. And they
hopefully
do
turn
that
them
for a
into stars.
reason. Well, and the thing is that they become stars off of this, right? But they do that because, which is really a bizarre turn for Lucas, because one of his reasonings for that is because he didn't want people coming in and having the name actors like color the characters. It's like you're not really fully invested in the character because you're all like, oh, that's like Tom
It's Samuel
Selleck
L.
or something.
Jackson.
Yeah. But the thing is, he did that though. He put Samuel L. Jackson in. He put Liam Neeson. He put Natalie Portman. It's like,
Ewan
okay,
McGregor.
yeah. It's, I mean, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
you pretty much populated your whole trilogy here with like name actors, But for the most part, he always tried to keep it with the unknowns because then you don't have any like preconceived notions about
Yeah.
the character, or the person's individual fame wasn't necessarily getting in the way of or coloring the character in any way. So you have that kind of a thing going where, it's a little bit better. And I think that that's what they're trying to do here, is that they go for, okay, here's the cast of kids that we think can pull off these characters well, but their names aren't necessarily going to get in the way, or they're not going to pull an attitude or whatever. The only thing that I hope though is that even though they may not necessarily be, and again, look, I mean, I probably should have, but it's not like I looked these kids up on IMDb or something and started getting any kind of a um like a thing on their whole roster, their
Background.
filmography,
Yeah.
yeah, and all that other stuff. Mostly because, again, I'm still kind of on the fence on whether or not I truly care about this show yet.
Care. Yeah. No, I totally no, I totally agree with that. That's the thing. It's like when you're invested in it, you're gonna investigate. But when you're not investigating, when you're not invested,
Yeah,
you're
now
not gonna do
granted,
that.
but we are doing a show though. I mean, I guess we do. Like if we come out and
Well,
say, "Hey, this is," we're revealing the cast. Now, technically, we did our job. We revealed the cast,
yes, we did.
but we don't know that much about them either. And
That's kind of a good thing though, because like I said, I think they're really pretty much not really
well, here's
big
the reason why I say
actors.
that. The reason why I say that is because I hope that they're experienced enough. Part of the problem with some of is almost like the Daisy Ridley issue. Now, she sort of grew into the role a little bit, but you could tell she was an inexperienced actor,
Hmm.
from the get-go. I mean, that was a fairly obvious thing, and that's the thing that I'm really hoping that they didn't sacrifice name for experience. I mean, there's a lot of actors out there that are working actors, kids included, that are
Mhm.
really experienced. They're just not household names. You just don't know who they are. But they're really experienced. I mean, even Jake Lloyd, as annoying as he was, he was in Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, he had done some stuff. He wasn't like a household name, but he had done some stuff.
Mhm.
And I hope that that's the case with these kids too. Same thing with Stranger Things. I mean, basically that show is what put all those kids on the map. Now they ended up being really good, and that's what I really hope happens here. I hope that they can basically carry the show with experience, with talent, and I mean, you got to figure, okay, they got the role, so you hope that the casting agent's doing their job or whatever, but who knows? And you said it was like what, 8 episodes that this thing's gonna be?
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Dragonfly says, in wrestling terms, she's getting a major push, and I'm all for it. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. This is one of those things where I think that, and this is actually true for this show. It's even hard to talk about this thing, honestly. We brought this up tonight because, and I actually had mixed feelings. I was in the back of my mind, I was almost like, should we really, what else is out there? What else could we, oh, Ronaldo's with us. Hey, Ronaldo. It's almost like, what else could we talk about? What else is going on? Is there any other Ahsoka thing we could deal with or something like that? Because there's been so little that's been out there. And I mean, I want to put this right now to the people who are watching us live. And, even if you're not watching us, like let's say you're watching the rebroadcast of this thing or whatever, you're just watching this on demand after the fact. Do you care about this show? I mean, I guess that's the question I want to put out there, because again, I had very mixed feelings, because usually we do like what, an hour show or something like that. And I'm sitting there thinking like, man, can we talk about this for an hour? We don't know anything about this show. We don't know anything about these kids. I mean, I guess it might be kind of fun to just look up one or two of them on IMDb or something. But
Well, Ryan Kiera Armstrong, she was in and I think a lot of these kids honestly were in American Horror Story.
Well, now
That's
that,
what I've
so
seen.
okay, so I saw the first season of that. There's like 9 seasons or something stupid. It's a very good show. I mean, it's, you know what? I keep forgetting to watch the show too. It's a great show. The first season was really good, and every season they have like kind of a different theme. So if they're coming from that,
Yeah, a lot of these kids are coming from that. The young girl, Ryan Kiera Armstrong, she's also played young Antonia from Black Widow.
Oh, I'll see. So I kind of know who these people are.
Not
by name, again, not
Right.
household names, but
Right, and that's what I said. I think most of these kids come from television episodes, like and some they have acting chops. Like I said, I know you're not just throwing some kid cold out here on a Star Wars show.
Well, I mean, it's not. I'm not talking
it's
about
just-
when I talk about lack of experience. I'm not talking about like they were in their school play and now they're in this. I mean, because a lot of times they basically they're getting them from like, oh, I was in the Folgers commercial, and then I did like some soap opera, or I mean, there's usually like some experience, but you're talking about something like American Horror Story. That's experience. That's okay. Now you're sort of in the realm of what I would expect from a Star Wars show. Although my expectations of Star Wars shows are, lowering as each one is released, but still, it's kind of like, especially this, because, you had a good point at the beginning of this show. All these other shows that have ultimately, in various degrees, disappointed us were things that we already cared about. Where this show, it's like we don't even know if we're going to be invested in it. I mean, it's like we don't know. We didn't ask for this. Like nobody was sitting there going, it'd be great if we had a Goonies like show in Star Wars. Nobody was saying that.
No, but see, here's the thing, and I think we wouldn't have a problem with it if everything else was working. The
Well,
problem becomes just like if everything else is kind of like subpar or failing, or you don't really know. See, if everything was kind of like, all right, Mandalorian season 1 was great, 2 was great, 3 was great. Okay, Book of Boba Fett, great. Ahsoka, amazing. Then you drop something like this. It's like, okay, well, cool. Let's just see what this becomes. I'm legitimately interested now,
right,
just
based
because I
on
want.
track record,
But when
because everything else was
based on
good.
track record and based on the things that we already care about has been done successfully.
Mhm.
The problem is that when the things that we actually care about is kind of somewhat tanking or teetering, and then now you want to throw up some kitty little shows like that we don't even care about or not asking for. Now watch. This thing would be amazing.
You know why though?
and and
I'll tell you
and that
why.
would tick us off because it's like, really,
Well,
this is the
kind
show
of.
that we all love. We can't wait to see another season of. Forget Andor. David's ranting and raving about Skeleton Crew all of a sudden.
Well, look,
So
here's the thing, and that would be interesting, right? Is that it would be kind of bittersweet actually if this were incredible and we're like, great, something like Ahsoka, they totally dropped the ball on, but this thing they get right. However, there's also an effect from the fan because, obviously there's an objective and subjective part of all this too. Objectively, it could be good or whatever, kind of like you're saying, but I think it has a good chance of being subjectively accepted by everybody because there's no real expectations. If they're not
true.
bringing in characters for whom we are already familiar and we know their backstories, like okay, how they handling this person and stuff like that, it's like okay, well, this is brand new. And in fact, this could be a good test case for making the argument of instead of retreading, all these, hey, let's go into, Palpatine's backstory now, although I would love to see that.
Mhm.
Maybe they back away from that a little bit and stop mining okay, this takes place in between episodes 4 and 5 and stuff like that. I mean, you could still do that kind of thing, but you know what I mean? The basically
Yeah.
offshoots of the proper storyline. If they do brand new stuff with new characters, if this works and there's no, cameos or, little member berries, as they say, then you actually do stand a chance of this thing being accepted and actually liked because as long as it's objectively good, the acting's good, direction, writing, all that stuff. If that's actually on point, if that's objectively good, then I have a feeling that a lot more people will accept it because there's no preconceived notions on this thing, right? It's not a you ruined my childhood kind of thing, or,
Mhm.
you made Boba Fett a buffoon, or, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Ronaldo says, probably you already talked about this, but is Skeleton Crew going to be released this year? Yeah, we did talk about it. And yeah, according to what we've seen, looks like December. So, I mean, I don't know.
This is just
That's
December or January. It could be
December,
right at
January,
the end. It could be technically at the end of December, and like, oh, December 28th or something stupid, and then now
or
we got
31st, like that one. I forgot which season of
yeah,
Cobra Kai that was. I think it was like season 4 or something like that, where they dropped it on like New Year's Eve. Could be something like
yeah, or
that.
something. Um, Here's an interesting thing though. While Skeleton Crew and Ahsoka are both considered completely their own thing, Favreau has hinted that there may be some crossovers between characters from the two. He has expressed interest in seeing Skeleton Crew characters in Mandalorian season 4. Interesting enough, some people think that Ahsoka has already laid groundwork for Skeleton Crew in a very subtle, quiet way that will only become obvious later.
What's that supposed to mean? I mean, there
I
was the
think
one. Okay, she was on that. Oh, I don't even remember what planet that was. Remember when she was on the planet and she got that map and she had to fight those droids or whatever? It was like episode 1 or 2, actually. Maybe that's something because there's a couple of things too. This is another thing, right? I've read this both about Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte, where they were talking about kind of that Indiana Jones-ish archaeology kind of thing playing into it.
well, I also think that it could be because we went to the unknown regions, some of the week. Maybe that's what the skeleton crew is.
I don't know though. Well,
Because it says that they're
if
lost
they're
in
trying
space,
to,
so
yeah, if they're lost in space, I mean, I guess that.
and again, it says their home planet. We don't know what that home planet is. It could be out there with Peridia somewhere. So that could be their galaxy, and maybe they're lost in the proper galaxy, and they're trying to get back to the, you know. So that could be
Wouldn't it be
a
great if we
possibility.
actually had more information on this show? When it's literally like 2 months, maybe three, like 2.5, somewhere like between 2 and 3 months from release. It'd be
hmm
really nice. Because again, it's really hard to get excited about something that we don't know that much about. Let's see.
I think we might start to see things around either Halloween or maybe Thanksgiving. Probably Thanksgiving. That's what I'm going for.
Well, look, because you know how they do the general cycle of anything like this, of this magnitude, is usually you get some sort of a weird, like, 15-second teaser. And then you get kind of a 30-second teaser trailer. Sometimes they do that first, right? Sometimes they bypass the 15-second thing. Because if you think about it, like back with Rogue One, and I know that's a film, but they handle the TV stuff a lot of times the same way. But remember in Rogue One, it was like a year away from being released. And they just kind of showed you, they had that Obi-Wan voiceover and they were showing you like this lush, like almost tropical looking land,
hmm
which was probably Scarif. But I
hmm
mean, it basically like gave you no information. It was like this 15-second thing. It was like one of the Obi-Wan lines that they repurposed and they kind of put it over this landscape, and then they just had the Rogue One logo, and that was it. So sometimes they don't always do that. Sometimes they go right to the 30-second teaser trailer. Or sometimes they could even do like a 15-second, but it's a little bit meatier, right? So you get that, okay? So after that, usually comes like the first maybe minute and a half trailer. And then you get a 2.5 minute trailer. And then you get a bunch of TV spots and, all kinds of stuff. Sometimes you even get a third trailer. And usually they'll start this a lot earlier in the cycle. We haven't gotten any of that. And so you're right. I mean, they could end up dropping, they might even bypass the teasers altogether and just start with the minute and a half. But the point is, it's one thing if you're doing, okay, this show's going to be about Palpatine's origin. But when you're trying to sell like an entirely new thing and get people to care, because it's kind of like what you said. Why should anybody care? I mean, people are already down on the Disney Plus shows as it is. They said that Ahsoka actually had a 40% drop in viewership.
hmm
And that's Ahsoka. That's like a known, beloved character.
Yes.
So, I mean, this thing doesn't stand I mean, it seems to me like if you're the marketing department, man, you'd be like trying to get people excited about this thing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's really interesting. Their their strategy on marketing, on um basically, giving the public what they need to know in order to drum up interest, because before they know it, it's going to be up on us, and then no one's really going to care. Somebody's going to be invested in other stuff, and it's like, some kids, never mind. keep going. You know,
I
unless
mean,
people, unless
unless
it comes out how hot and everybody's like
that's it.
loving this show, and
You
it's
know,
just like, man,
maybe
you
they're
gotta
doing
see
that on
this.
purpose. Maybe it's like
Like,
hey, we'll just let this thing sneak under the radar and let word of mouth build it up instead of us, announcing it with trumpets and then it falls flat.
yeah.
All right, so Ronaldo says, I just hope that we see new characters. Well, you're going to see new characters. Getting tired of
hmm
seeing the same people. Speaking of new characters, Dragonfly says, what do you think about Jason possibly showing up? Well, I mean, if you're talking about, like,
Jason Solo.
well, then there's Jason Sandula, too.
Mm.
Which, Jason Solo, really you can't do at this
Yeah, I
point
would say, yeah, you can't do
because that's
him.
Kylo, essentially. I mean, I guess you could, but especially in this timeline. So, I mean, Jason Sandula might, I don't know, or those actors look a little younger. Yeah. They're more like preteens or like 9 or something. They're not.
Yeah, they look like they may be like 11.
Yeah. I mean, Jason Sandula is like a little older than them. So I don't
No,
know.
he's younger, I think.
Is he?
Yeah.
He was
Well,
like, well,
no,
maybe.
he actually might be. No, he might actually be around their age.
Well, all
You're
right.
right.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
And thinking about it, yeah, he might be around 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah, he's another character I don't care about. Uh, Ronaldo says, I think there's no marketing because it won't come out this year. And he said, did they even finish filming?
Well,
I
that
don't
was
know.
that's
I mean, that's the
that
thing.
was,
Nobody knows. The problem with this whole thing is
and
we
maybe that's why they
just don't
haven't.
know.
But like I said, they have things that's been, like I said, as of September, they've talked about, and they say, it's been, well, no release date has been given. The series is expected to release sometime in 2023. Recent reports have suggested that might be pushed to early 24,
But again,
in
you're
line
getting
with
that from something from last month, right?
correct.
Whereas this article from 4 days ago puts it back in December. So, I mean, and then I Am Just Me basically says, right, because of the strike. And that's the thing. We don't really know where a lot of this stuff falls.
Well, I'll put it to you this way: it almost has to be done by now if you're going to release it in December or January. I mean,
Exactly.
it
Exactly.
has
Like,
to
it
be
doesn't
done
matter,
because
right? It's got to be.
yeah,
I mean, unless they're doing, like maybe some reshoots or, you might be doing, shooting some second unit stuff or whatever to punch some things up, or maybe you got stuff sent to a VFX house to, you're still working on some of the graphics, but principal photography
photography.
absolutely has to be done.
Yeah,
And I would say pretty much, because look, I mean, a lot of times when people are showing trailers and stuff, you can have like barely any of the movie done and still kick out a trailer. In fact, there have been times, Star Wars is notorious for this too, but I mean, there have been times where other films have done this as well, where they'll actually shoot scenes specifically for the trailer. And
hmm
that's why they don't end up in the film. Now, of course, you get something like Rogue One, where like 90% of the trailer didn't show up in the film, but that's
that
like
was crazy.
that was like a different set of
Anomaly. That's an
circumstances.
anomaly.
Yeah, and it usually isn't that severe, but I mean, you can be like maybe a few weeks into filming or something and still get enough material to kick out a trailer. But generally speaking, yes, by the time you're going to start a marketing cycle, which of course they haven't yet, but I mean, honestly, I was surprised when they were kicking out the December. I mean, even if it is January, that was still kind of shocked because I'm looking at it like you were. I'm kind of, wow, it's October. It's,
hmm
I mean, again, I can't stress this enough. We have heard nothing about this show really. Like there was, I think, a period maybe 4 or 5 months ago or something like that where they did kick out a few little bits of information or something. But for the most part, we haven't seen anything on this show.
Yeah.
Let me get to Ronaldo here. He says, I mean, if it's finished, the strike won't affect it. However, I wonder if this was being filmed during the strike. I don't think so, because it was, if you remember, they had announced this. It wasn't at the last celebration. It was like the one before it, I think. Or no, it might have even been before that. It might have been when they announced Lando, whichever one that was. I think it was like in 2021. Because I think this was on the radar. Remember when we did that whole, here's everything that's going to be released in 2022, and we were wrong on like everything? Like we had Ahsoka coming out in 22 and, all that other stuff where it was kind of like, all right, we sort of dropped the ball on that one. But it looked that way because naturally Kathleen Kennedy is notorious for just like announcing a bunch of stuff and then sitting on it for like 2 years. So this was, I don't remember exactly which celebration it was announced, but it was well before, the strike thing could have happened. I Am Just Me says, couldn't have been filmed during the strike. Yeah, right, obviously. But I mean, I think that it was filmed well before. I don't think that it was one of those things that, they just started. I think it was actually shot maybe last year or earlier this year, something like that.
Yeah, it's usually, especially for something like this, because you have a lot of post-production stuff you got to do.
Well,
That's
here's
the
a
other thing
question
too.
for
Like,
you. You think they're going to use the volume again?
no question.
Yeah, but I wonder if it's going to be, like, are they going to heavily... Because, some of them, they'll use the volume for certain scenes or whatever, but then they'll do, like, practical locations for everything else. And then there's other shows, like Obi-Wan was notorious for it, where, like, practically the whole thing is done on the volume.
Well, the fact that, see, the added benefits somewhat to the, and I don't know, to what degree. So they're kind of lost in space. So I don't know if they're going to be stopping a whole lot of places, or is it majority going to take place in space? So
Yeah.
that's going to determine a lot too. If they keep it mostly tied to a ship, then
Yeah, and they
you
just
can
build
do
a
a
set piece or something,
set,
right? Exactly.
and especially with kids now, it's easier for them to act in a real space versus, this computer generated, world. But if they're stopping at a bunch of planets and, doing all that, then we'll see.
Well, even that could be, sets on a soundstage. They don't necessarily
True.
have to use the volume, although you can make the argument that the volume essentially is a soundstage. Just instead of building real pieces, you got a bunch of LED screens up. I'm Just Me says, unless they are using AI, which is a huge reason why the strike is happening. Yeah, and it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon either. There have been some attempts at resolving it, and there's like this big package for the whole like AI thing as far as compensation goes. And so far that's where there's been a big stall in the whole thing. So it really, I was talking about this the other day with one of my friends where we were just talking about, hey, with this strike thing, you got to wonder if they don't resolve this soon, it's going to start to affect movie releases at this point, right? Because fortunately, because you have so many movies or whatever in the can or streaming content, for like Netflix, Amazon, all that stuff, you were okay. Like they could, like with the writer's strike, and then of course, with this SAG thing, it's like you could weather this a little bit because you had enough in the can that you could continue a fairly normal release schedule, and the audience wouldn't necessarily feel it right away. However, if this thing keeps dragging on like it is, eventually content's going to run out. And so now you got to wonder, well, is there going to be pressure from, say, movie theaters? Like, hey, because, you got to have butts in the seats, right? Because they don't make that much off of the movies, but they do off of concessions.
Concessions, yeah.
I mean, I remember during the pandemic, one of the local chains around here actually started putting their concessions on DoorDash and, all that other stuff. Because it was kind of like nobody was able to go to the theater. But they're like, you know what? Everybody's watching movies at home. How would you like actual movie theater concessions at home? Order it from us. You can come and pick up your popcorn and pretzels and nachos or whatever and bring it home with you. And you got legitimate movie theater food, at home, which they still do.
Depending on how, it's kind of cool, but if you think about, depending on how far you live, I mean,
well,
might be
okay,
cold by the time you go.
That's the first thing. The second thing is you're still paying movie theater prices.
Plus the DoorDash price.
Well, plus the DoorDash price. Or if you go pick it up, right? So let's just say there was a theater that was even relatively close to you, and you're going to pick it up. It's like part of the reason why you're willing to pay these astronomical prices is because you're there.
It's right there.
It's right there. It's like, look, I'm hungry. I want some popcorn. I want, some nachos, pretzel, whatever. Well, okay, it's here. I'll just walk up to the counter. I'll order it. I'll go. If I actually have to go and do it, I'd rather, look, instead of getting a pretzel at, a local movie theater or something, I'll go to like a pretzel shop and order one.
I'll just get a whole hot and ready. I'm at home.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, so some of it, I think, especially with the pandemic, was kind of like okay, I really miss going to the movie theater. So it was like a psychological thing. It was like, if I can have these things that I normally have from the theater, so I'm getting, because you can make popcorn, but the point is, if you get the movie theater popcorn, it sort of like authenticates the whole experience for you, and you can, from there, it just, I don't know, it just feels better. But I don't think that that's necessarily the case now. But then again, if this strike keeps going, you might see a similar situation where movie theaters are going to start to feel the pinch. Even Netflix, because a lot of times people go, well, a thing like Netflix, Amazon, they can just produce their own stuff. Well, they can if they can't get any actors for it. And sure, they could use independent. They can use people who are outside the union, but then, that gets a little bit tricky too. So, yeah, I don't know. Ronaldo, talking about the strike too, says, I wonder if the strike affected Andor season 2. He said part of it was filmed during the strike.
Yeah, likely it did.
Yeah, I would say so. Andor season 2. Well, it is supposed to come out in 24, I believe. Like, we actually knew the date at one point, didn't we? Like, I want to say it was like in the summer or fall or something. I know there was a month attached to it. I remember somebody saying, yeah, there was some, like they had announced it. Because I remember when we were talking about it when we were still reviewing season 1. And they had announced, it's going to be in 2024. It was later in 2024. Because I remember, when we were getting to the season finale and everything, we're like, oh man, we got to wait like a year and a half for this thing. I remember that was kind of a thing for us. David said the strike affected Andor 1.
August says 24.
Yeah, that was it. So I mean, we got to wait, a good chunk into 24. So because of that, yeah, I would almost guarantee that the strike totally affected this, because look, the bottom line is, the longer that this strike drags on, you're going to start seeing a lot of your favorite shows affected. Because again, I mean, there's been a good number of stuff in the can, but I mean, look, our favorite, Cobra Kai, I mean, that was drastically, first of all, that was affected by the writer's strike. Okay, then they resolved that, and so they started writing it again. But now with the SAG strike continuing on, they can't shoot anything. It probably would have premiered by now, to be honest. So who knows when we're getting season 6. And, the only good thing about that is that season 5 ended in a good enough spot that it's satisfying. Like, they could have wrapped the whole series up with that. But, a lot of these other shows, I mean, Ahsoka season 2, it's probably a little bit too early to even be talking about that. I don't think they're anywhere near ready to shoot it. I don't even know if they've written anything on it yet. What other Star Wars shows could be affected by this? Maybe Mandalorian season 4?
Season 4, Lando.
But, Lando probably. Because I was going to say, with Ahsoka season 2, Mandalorian season 4, I think those are far enough ahead that I don't necessarily, especially with the writer's strike, resolved, I don't think that they're really in any danger of being delayed by this. The SAG strike, I think, isn't really necessarily affecting those shows. But Lando, maybe. But,
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of those where they showed us a logo at that one celebration, and then you didn't hear anything about that until, what was it, like 3 or 4 months ago? When Donald Glover, and I think it was his brother, were talking about how they were going to write it and do all that stuff, so you heard a little bit more about that, and now you don't hear anything again. It's so inconsistent. And then, of course, there's Star Wars films. We're supposed to get one of those in, 25?
Yeah.
And there's been rumors that maybe that's going to be the big Mandoverse movie. So, we don't know.
Because they don't know.
Exactly.
But,
See, this is why you guys watch shows like us, right? You try to get the information, and we go, we don't know. But that's why we don't, we don't really put ourselves out there like we're some sort of a news site. We're more of a discussion show. We discuss things. So we're just as in the dark as everybody else, and that's what we get to discuss. Ronaldo says, Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and Lando won't be able to start while the strike is happening, not even the script writing. Well, the writer's strike is done, though. It's only the Screen Actors Guild that is still striking. Now, I know that a lot of TV shows have gone back to work with their writers and all that stuff. Film, I don't know. They should be able to. They should be able to do the writing. It's the filming. That's what's going to be affected. And, that's a big thing. Oh, yeah, Ronaldo says, oh, yeah, I forgot it ended. Yeah, that ended. And that's because they overlapped, right? I mean, they basically, you had the writer's strike, and then the Screen Actors Guild struck too, and, it was kind of an overlapping thing. And, yeah, so it was easy that, if you missed the whole fact that the writer's strike ended, it kind of blended together. But I really don't know. I really don't know the fate of any of this stuff, because what do we got? We got Lando, we got Ahsoka season 2, Mandalorian season 4, and then, of course, now we have the Skeleton Crew show. We have Andor season 2, which I may have already said. That's about it, right? As far as confirmed. Oh, I mean, there was also that there was that animated Young Jedi thing too. I know that's supposed to come out.
Yeah.
I Am Just Me says, yeah, the writers are back in the building, but the writers are just sitting on scripts now because there's no actors to perform them. Exactly. So it's kind of like you can write the stuff, but there's no shooting anything. So it's going to be completely delayed. I mean, I guess about the best they could do right now is just get a bunch of stuff written, and maybe, I don't know. Here's a thought. Maybe Lucasfilm could use this time to come up with a plan. Actually kind of plan your stuff out. That would be cool.
Well,
Ronaldo says, I think the films are safe just because we won't see one, at least for 2025. I think it's safe to say everything will be over by January. That's, well, we'll see. I mean, look, eventually, something has to give. I mean, there's just too much money on the table for this thing to go on forever. But then again, especially like you guys are saying, I mean, this whole AI thing, That's really the sticky point for this. And they do need to resolve that now, because you can't let that get too much. You can't let it progress too much. You can't get it, let it get too many legs or whatever before you actually put some parameters around it, get a few rules that govern it. Because otherwise it's going to be like what happened with the whole Napster and music thing. The record companies just ignored the whole ability of file sharing, streaming, stuff like that. They had an opportunity to jump on it, control it, and actually profit from it, but they ignored it. The technology moved beyond them. And then by the time that they were ready to react and they started, Steve Jobs basically saved everybody with iTunes. But if they had done that earlier, the business model and everything could have been put in place and everything would have been fine. And record companies are still paying for that mistake. And now it's even worse because you got, streaming. So now artists aren't being paid. There's a whole big thing on that too that was very similar to the SAG strike, but they kind of, Spotify and places like that agreed to pay them a little bit more money, although it's still fractions of a penny for each stream. So now you're seeing that on the film side with AI, where, look, remember Obi-Wan, right? You had James Earl Jones. Now, he gave his permission. He signed off on it. But they were able to, hey, let's make James Earl Jones sound the way he did in 1977. And it was good. Now, imagine how much, how much greater this technology is going to be 4, 5, 6 years down the line. It's moving pretty quick. And so I can understand why the Screen Actors Guild has to, get control of this now before they're pretty much prisoners of it. Let's see. Ronaldo says, some insiders say that it could be over by mid-November. I could see that. We're in what? Mid-October? Well, yeah, we're in mid-October. That's another month. I don't know.
Yeah, man. There's a lot, to consider coming up. I think with Skeleton Crew and much of the other entities that are forthcoming, much like Palpatine said, we have to watch with great interest to see what they come up with, and hopefully we get some information soon.
Well, I can tell you this. When Skeleton Crew does come out, we will be reviewing it.
Yes.
We'll review it. Now hopefully it's not a Vision situation.
Right.
But, well, actually, that's another one. Vision Season 3, wasn't that greenlit? Or was it still...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was greenlit.
So. All right, so, was that coming next year?
Mm-hmm.
You said excitedly.
Yes.
Hey, you didn't totally hate this last season, though,
No.
Of course, that doesn't mean you're signing up for season like, oh, this is cool. Can't wait for season 3. Hey, look, every job has its drawbacks. This one has visions.
Has vision.
Hopefully, Skeleton Crew's a little bit better, and, it's a little... I honestly hope, I really do. I hope that we are reviewing Skeleton Crew and we're talking about how amazing it is. For the love of all that's holy, I hope David likes it. It'll make our shows, well, I don't know. Sometimes our shows are a lot more fun when everybody's like disagreeing with everything.
Grumpy.
But, yeah, when everybody gets grumpy about it. It actually does make sometimes for better shows. Oh, Ronaldo. Oh, I gotta put this one up. Your lack of vision disturbs me.
And you'll pay for your lack of vision.
Well, you know what? On that note, I'm going to say it like this. We're glad that you guys watched tonight, and we discovered some things about Skeleton Crew together, I think, actually, because like I said, we knew who the cast was. Basically, that's what we came on to talk about, right? Is, okay,
Mhm.
We knew about Jude Law. We knew about a few other people. But then, of course, Julia White came into it. We revealed the names of the young kids that are going to be pretty much the focus of this thing. So, you guys were on board for that. But then we also actually found out a little bit more about it just by looking it up and discussing it and everybody exchanging information. So if you guys who are watching this after the live show is done, right, and you're just checking us out on demand, let us know if you have any additional information about Skeleton Crew, because we would love to know. And, obviously we're going to follow this, and when a trailer comes out, we'll react to it. We'll review the series when it comes out. But, right now, it's just not much we can do. We just don't know that much about it. And again, I think that's another ball drop for Lucasfilm. Ronaldo says, I'll bet $5 that it won't come out this year. Not a chance. Oh, he's sounding like David.
Mhm.
Yeah, how
They're in
many coffees are you gonna buy us if it comes out in December? It's like, you know what? If you guys, look, here's the thing. If you guys don't join one of these packages, I have to work this in, right? These are membership packages we have on Buy Me a Coffee. If we keep getting subscribers, though, we can actually start doing like a whole YouTube membership thing, which is, we would rather keep it in-house. But for now, we're doing Buy Me a Coffee. You could just buy us a coffee, or you can join at these various membership packages, and of course, you get some stuff and, a little bit of access or whatever. But it's like, if you don't do that, though, the other way to do it is just keep making these bets with us.
Great. It's turning to Canto Bite over here.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like it's gonna be like an online betting thing. Yeah, right. Exactly. Canto Bite. Hey, Ronaldo, like that Last Jedi was one of his favorites. So he says, just a quick question. When was the Acolyte coming out? Oh yeah, that's right. That was the one that I missed. That one actually should be coming out. I know it's 2024, obviously, but that was earlier. Wasn't that like May or something?
I think it's June.
Yeah, but it's right. Yeah, so it's right around there. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
like
Is it
early,
June? Yeah.
early summer or something like that. David said, "I'm excited to get my extra coffee in my gift box. It's gonna be the greatest coffee ever." I should do that. When I finally get around to sending you the T-shirt, I should include some coffee. Maybe what's that brand? I drink it sometimes too. It's a local one. It's like Detroit. Oh, what's it called? Detroit Bold or Detroit something. It's actually good. Honestly, the ones that what's that one brand that I've been getting lately, like Death something. It's got like some crazy name.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we want to drink.
I mean, granted,
Jesus.
yeah, right. He says, I think I'm done taking L's, guys.
Not as long as you live, my friend. Not as
That's
long as you
right.
live.
That's right. Absolutely. But yeah, Death by, I don't know. I'm gonna have to look that up. It's got like a skull and cry. I mean, it sounds really, really insane for a coffee brand. It's almost like what's that one sparkling water, like Liquid Death or something. It's got one of those type of names to it. It's expensive coffee, but it's really good. Once I find out the name.
Starbucks. So anyway.
No, Starbucks is expensive coffee. Not necessarily, like Death. But all right. So that's going to do it for our show tonight. Monday, we haven't really even figured out what we're talking about Monday yet, have we? I ask this every
More
show.
Skeleton Crew. No,
exactly. Maybe we'll find something out in a couple of days, right?
Right.
I don't know. Whatever it is, a couple of things. It's going to be interesting. At least we hope you guys find it interesting. And it's going to be Star Wars. So hopefully you guys check us out Monday night, 8 o'clock. With that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.